Hello everyone, and welcome back to Gone Legends. In today's video, we will be honoring American celebrities who sadly passed away today and over the last few days, as well as notable figures from around the world whose loss has touched many. Before we begin, we would truly appreciate your support. Please take a moment to like this video. Your kindness helps us continue sharing these stories. Thank you. And now, let us start.
Tucker Zimmerman was born in 1941, in the heart of America, at a time when the world was still finding its footing after war, loss, and uncertainty. He came into a country learning how to breathe again, how to dream again, how to listen. From the beginning, Tucker was different. Music didn't crash into his life with noise or spectacle. It arrived slowly, quietly, like a secret meant only for him. Folk songs drifted through the air, hymns echoed in the background of daily life, and the earliest sounds of rock and roll whispered promises of expression. Tucker learned early how to listen not just to sound, but to silence, and in that silence he found truth. As the music industry erupted in the 1960s and 1970s, chasing volume, image, and mass appeal, Tucker Zimmerman chose a path far removed from the spotlight. While others chased charts and crowds, he chased honesty. His songwriting was deeply personal, poetic, and raw. There was vulnerability in every lyric, a sense that each song was less a performance and more a confession. His voice carried weight, not because it was loud, but because it was real. His music didn't demand attention. It rewarded patience. Eventually, Tucker left America and settled in Belgium, a move that would define the rest of his life. In Europe, his artistry was finally understood in full. He became a revered figure. A songwriter's songwriter, quietly admired by musicians who recognized the depth of his craft. His work explored themes of longing, exile, love, faith, and loss. He proved that success didn't need validation from fame, and that the most powerful art often lives just outside the mainstream. On January 17, 2026, tragedy struck. Tucker Zimmerman and his wife lost their lives in a devastating house fire at their home in St. Georges-sur-Meuse, Belgium. He was 84 years old. The flames took more than a life that night. They took a voice that spoke gently to the soul. The news spread quietly, fitting for a man who lived quietly. But the loss was immense. Tucker Zimmerman left behind a body of work that continues to whisper truth to those willing to listen. He reminded the world that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it simply endures. Wilbur Wood Jr. was born in 1941 in the American South, where strength was learned early and nothing came easy. In his world, baseball wasn't just a pastime, it was a lifeline. From dusty fields to organized leagues, Wilbur learned discipline, patience, and resilience. He wasn't built for flash or spectacle, he was built for endurance. When Wilbur Wood reached Major League Baseball, he didn't arrive as a conventional star. He chose the knuckleball, one of the most unpredictable pitches in the game. It danced, it floated, it defied control. And somehow, Wilbur mastered it. While others relied on velocity and power, he relied on intelligence, rhythm, and mental toughness. With the Chicago White Sox, he became something rare, a workhorse. In the early 1970s, Wilbur Wood carried pitching loads that seem impossible today, game after game, season after season. He rarely asked for rest. His arm became a symbol of durability in an era when pitchers were expected to carry entire teams on their shoulders. Managers trusted him. Teammates believed in him. Fans depended on him. He wasn't flashy, but he was relentless, and in baseball, that kind of reliability becomes legend. Wilbur Wood passed away on January 17, 2066, at the age of 84. His death closed the door on a tougher era of baseball, one defined by grit, stamina, and unwavering commitment. He left behind records that may never be broken and a legacy built not on hype, but on heart. Wilbur Wood didn't just pitch games. He carried seasons, and his story will always belong to the soul of the sport. Bob Weir was born in 1947 into a post-war America searching for identity, freedom, and meaning. From an early age, Bob didn't fit neatly into expectations. He was restless, curious, and drawn to music as if it were a second language. That curiosity led him to a fateful meeting with Jerry Garcia, a moment that would reshape not only his life, but American music itself. As a founding member of the Grateful Dead, Bob Weir became part of something far greater than a band. The Dead were a living movement, an experiment in improvisation, community, and freedom. Bob's rhythm guitar style broke every rule. He didn't simply keep time, he created space, he wove sound into texture, allowing music to breathe in ways few had ever attempted. Through decades of touring, cultural revolutions, personal loss, and transformation, Bob Weir remained standing. He witnessed the passing of bandmates, the evolution of generations of fans, and the transformation of music itself. Songs like Sugar Magnolia, Truckin', and Playing in the Band became shared memories carried across time and generations. Bob Weir's legacy is not confined to records or stages. It lives in the communities built around the music, in the freedom it represented, and in the idea that art doesn't need boundaries to survive. He stands as a living bridge between the past and the present, reminding the world that legends don't always fade away. Selma Blair was born in 1972 in the quiet suburban world of Southfield, Michigan, a place far removed from red carpets, flashing cameras, and the unforgiving glare of Hollywood lights. Her full name, Selma Blair Baitner, carried echoes of heritage, history, and identity long before the world would come to know her face. She was born into a Jewish family, raised with tradition, structure, and expectation, yet from an early age there was something unmistakably different about her. Selma was introspective, observant, sensitive to the emotional currents beneath everyday life. She wasn't the loudest voice in the room, but she was always listening, always absorbing, always feeling. As a child, Selma learned early how to navigate complexity. Her parents divorced when she was young, a quiet fracture that left lasting impressions on her sense of stability and belonging. She moved between worlds, between households, between emotional landscapes, learning resilience long before she understood the word. Even then, she gravitated towards storytelling. Acting was not initially a dream of fame, but a form of expression, a way to make sense of feelings that had no easy language. On stage, she found a place where vulnerability was allowed, even celebrated. Selma attended Kalamazoo College before transferring to New York University, and later the University of Michigan, where her academic path wove through photography, theater, and psychology. She was never chasing a single destination. She was searching for understanding. Acting, when it finally claimed her fully, felt less like a career choice and more like an inevitability. It was the place where intellect, emotion, and empathy could coexist. Hollywood did not open its doors easily. Selma's early years in Los Angeles were marked by auditions that went nowhere, roles that barely paid the bills, and the quiet doubt that follows every artist before recognition arrives. She appeared in small television roles, commercials, background performances. Each moment was a lesson in patience. Each rejection sharpened her resolve. She was learning how to survive an industry that often rewards volume over depth. Then came the moment that changed everything. In the late 1990s, Selma Blair began landing roles that revealed her unique presence. She wasn't a conventional leading lady. Her power lay in subtlety, in the way her eyes carried sadness without explanation, in the way her voice could sound fragile and defiant at the same time. Films like Cruel Intentions introduced audiences to a character who was sharp, wounded, manipulative, and heartbreakingly human. Selma's performance as Cecile Caldwell could have easily become caricature. Instead, she infused it with nuance, making the character unforgettable. But it was her role in Hellboy that cemented her place in cinematic history. As Liz Sherman, Selma portrayed a woman cursed with destructive power, terrified of her own body, afraid of what she might harm simply by existing. The parallels between Liz Sherman and Selma Blair would later feel almost prophetic. On screen, she embodied isolation, fear, and longing for acceptance with haunting precision. Liz Sherman was not a superhero in the traditional sense. She was broken, she was scared, she was trying to survive herself, and Selma gave her soul. Throughout the early 2000s, Selma's career flourished. She appeared in comedies, dramas, independent films, and television series. She worked with acclaimed directors and shared scenes with Hollywood's biggest names. Yet even as her career expanded, something beneath the surface was unraveling. Selma was living with symptoms she could not explain: chronic pain, fatigue, balance issues, cognitive fog. For years, she was misdiagnosed, dismissed, told it was stress, anxiety, or exaggeration. Like so many women, she was taught to endure quietly. In 2018, Selma Blair received a diagnosis that would redefine her life: multiple sclerosis, a chronic autoimmune disease that attacks the central nervous system. The words landed with both devastation and relief. At last, there was a name for the pain. At last, the suffering had context, but the reality was unforgiving. M's is unpredictable, progressive, unrelenting. It changes how a person walks, speaks, thinks, and moves through the world. Selma did something extraordinary in the face of that diagnosis. She refused to hide. Where many would retreat, Selma stepped forward. She walked red carpets with a cane. She allowed cameras to capture her tremors, her fatigue, her vulnerability. She spoke openly about fear, grief, and rage. She showed the world what illness actually looks like when stripped of polish and pretense. In doing so, she shattered Hollywood's illusion of perfection. Her battle intensified when she underwent an aggressive stem cell transplant, a grueling medical procedure designed to halt the progression of the disease. The treatment nearly broke her body. It stripped her immune system, left her isolated, weak, and at times unsure she would survive. But Selma endured, not with bravado, not with denial, with honesty, with humor, with humanity. Her documentary, introducing Selma Blair, became a landmark moment in disability representation. It was not inspirational in the shallow sense. It was raw, uncomfortable, beautiful, painful. It showed a woman learning how to live again inside a body she no longer recognized. It showed grief for the self she once was, and courage in becoming someone new. Selma Blair's legacy is not confined to filmography or awards. It lives in the millions of people who finally saw themselves reflected in her truth. She became a voice for those who had been invisible, for those told to be quiet about their pain, for those navigating chronic illness in a world that prizes productivity over compassion. She continues to act, to write, to advocate. She continues to show up, imperfect and powerful. Selma Blair is a reminder that strength does not mean invincibility. Sometimes, strength is allowing yourself to be seen when you are afraid. Sometimes, survival itself is the greatest performance of all. And in a world obsessed with legends who burn out, Selma Blair stands as something rarer. A legend who endures. Selma Blair's journey after her diagnosis was not a straight line toward healing or triumph. It was a winding road marked by setbacks, small victories, and moments of deep reckoning. Each day became an exercise in patience. Simple actions once taken for granted, walking across a room, speaking clearly, holding an object without trembling, now required intention and courage. Yet through it all, Selma refused to let her illness define the totality of who she was. Instead, she allowed it to become part of her story, not the end of it. Public appearances became acts of quiet rebellion. When Selma stepped onto red carpets with a cane or crutch, dressed in elegant gowns, she sent a message that echoed far beyond Hollywood. Disability did not erase beauty. Illness did not cancel worth. Vulnerability was not something to be hidden. It was something to be honored. Each photograph captured was not just an image of a celebrity, but a statement of presence. I am here. I exist. I matter. As her physical ability shifted, Selma's relationship with her craft evolved. Acting was no longer just about performance. It became a negotiation between her body and her spirit. She learned to listen more closely to herself, to respect limits without surrendering ambition. When she returned to television and film, it was not with the urgency of someone chasing relevance, but with the intention of someone choosing meaning. Every role carried weight. Every appearance felt deliberate. Writing became another lifeline. Through essays, interviews, and eventually her memoir, Selma found a way to articulate experiences that defied easy explanation. She wrote about pain that lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling, about grief for the life she once imagined, about anger at systems that failed to listen, and about hope, fragile, imperfect, but persistent. Her words resonated because they were unfiltered. She did not soften the edges of reality to make others comfortable. Motherhood added another layer to her story. As a single mother to her son, Selma faced the challenge of parenting while navigating a body that could no longer be relied upon in the same way. The kind of love that fuels perseverance. The kind that turns survival into purpose. Her son became both her anchor and her motivation, grounding her in moments when the world felt unsteady. She became a voice for those with multiple sclerosis and other chronic illnesses, not from a place of authority but from solidarity. She challenged stereotypes that painted disability as weakness or a tragedy alone. She showed that life does not end with diagnosis. It changes, yes, but it also expands in unexpected ways. Through speaking engagements, public conversations, and social media, she created space for honesty where silence once dominated. Her presence reshaped conversations about health and entertainment. Casting directors, producers, and audiences were forced to confront long-held assumptions. Who is allowed to be seen? Who is considered capable? Who gets to tell their story? Selma's continued work proved that talent does not disappear when circumstances change. It adapts, it deepens, it finds new forms of expression. As the years passed, Selma's story became less about what she lost and more about what she discovered. She discovered resilience she didn't know she possessed. She discovered community among those who had felt alone. She discovered that vulnerability could be a bridge rather than a barrier. And perhaps most importantly, she discovered that living authentically without apology was its own kind of victory. Selma Blair's legacy is still unfolding. She is not remembered solely for the characters she portrayed on screen, but for the courage she displayed off it, for choosing visibility when invisibility would have been easier, for turning pain into connection, for reminding the world that strength is not measured by how much one can endure in silence, but by how bravely one can speak the truth. In the story of Gone Legends, Selma Blair stands as a testament to survival in its most honest form, not a legend defined by an ending, but by persistence, by grace under pressure, by the refusal to disappear. And as the lights dim and the narration fades, her story lingers not as a tale of tragedy, but as a living reminder that even in fragility there is power, even in struggle there is beauty, and even in uncertainty there is the possibility of hope. As Selma Blair moved further into this new chapter of her life, time itself seemed to take on a different rhythm. Days were no longer measured by call times or premieres alone, but by energy, by strength, by the subtle signals her body sent without warning. She learned to negotiate with herself in ways she never had before. Rest became an act of self-respect rather than surrender. Slowness, once feared, became a form of listening. In that listening, Selma discovered a deeper connection to her inner world, one that fame and momentum had once drowned out. Hollywood, an industry not known for patience or accommodation, began to shift slowly, imperfectly, but undeniably in response to her visibility. Selma did not demand change with confrontation. She invited it with presence. Every appearance, every interview, every role accepted on her own terms became a quiet challenge to an old system. She was no longer trying to fit into a mold. She was reshaping it simply by existing within it. Her fashion choices became symbolic without ever feeling forced. Walking with a cane adorned by elegance rather than shame, Selma transformed a medical aid into a statement of identity. The red carpet, once a place of rigid expectation, became a stage for truth. Cameras captured not only gowns and smiles, but tremors, fatigue, and determination. These images traveled far beyond entertainment headlines. They reached people sitting in hospital rooms, in living rooms, in silence, people who finally felt seen. Selma often spoke about grief, not just grief for health, but for the self she once imagined she would always be. This grief was not dramatic or theatrical. It was quiet, persistent, and deeply human. She acknowledged it without letting it consume her. In doing so, she gave permission to others to mourn without guilt, to accept loss without losing identity, to understand that letting go and moving forward can exist at the same time. Her memoir further cemented her role as a storyteller beyond the screen. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, Selma had not lost her voice. If anything, it had become clearer. As she continued to work, Selma became more selective, drawn to stories that reflected complexity rather than perfection. Her performances carried new depth, shaped by lived experience rather than technique alone. There was a weight behind her expressions, a truth behind her stillness. She no longer needed to prove her talent. It spoke for itself. Beyond her career, Selma's advocacy expanded into broader conversations about disability, healthcare access, and representation. She challenged the notion that inspiration must look a certain way. She rejected the idea of being framed solely as brave or heroic. Instead, she insisted on being human. Some days were strong. Some days were not. And all of them mattered. Her relationship with her son remained at the center of her world. Parenthood, once imagined in motion and boundless energy, transformed into something deeper. Presence replaced pace. Selma spoke openly about teaching her child compassion through example, about showing him that strength includes asking for help. Their bond became a reflection of mutual learning, love shaped by honesty rather than illusion. Selma Blair's story does not follow the traditional arc of celebrity narrative. There is no single climax, no final triumph that neatly resolves everything. Instead, her life unfolds as a series of choices, each one grounded in authenticity. She chose visibility over comfort, truth over image, connection over isolation. In the landscape of Gone Legends, Selma Blair occupies a rare space. She is not remembered for a tragic ending, nor defined by a single role. She stands as a living testament to endurance, not as an abstract concept, but as a daily practice. Her legacy is being written in real time, in moments both public and private. She reminds us that legends are not always forged in grand finales. Sometimes they are shaped quietly, in the courage to wake up, to try again, to be seen exactly as one is. Selma Blair teaches us that survival can be an art form, and that dignity does not require perfection. And so her story continues not as a whisper fading into memory, but as a steady voice, still speaking, still shaping the world around it. A voice that says life does not end when it changes. It simply asks us to listen more closely. In that listening, we find her legacy,